You have been trying to work with agents for a while now. Maybe you've installed some type of Python library or some open source tool, and it's just not working. Or you're struggling with installation issues, dependency issues, and you haven't even gotten it to do any of the stuff that's promised by people who are pushing AI agents, like developing a full stack application or automating your entire content creation workflow. So what's happening here? Like what's going on? We are in deep on the AI agent hype cycle for sure. So what's going to happen in the next couple of months is people are going to get tired of failing with AI agents, and it's going to cause a slow spiral down in terms of enthusiasm around this stuff. And this is very normal with any new emerging technology. What happens is the people who are the early adopters who are going to try this stuff anyways and play around with it start to give way towards a new market of folks who are coming in and trying to see, okay, what do I use this for? And what is it actually something I can leverage in my day-to-day life or leverage in my business? So that's going to cause this turning point either between late this year or early 2026. And it's going to be a dividing point where you're going to fall on one or two sides. Either you're going to be an enthusiast, and at that point, it's just going to be too hard to continue being an enthusiast. Either it's really expensive or it's just super time consuming, and you're not getting the return on your investment on all fronts. Or you're going to switch over to being someone who is a builder in the space, someone who's doing the either the research or creating products or putting things out there that other people are going to consume. Some people are going to cross over into the realm of being called builders. So people who are building with this stuff. Now, being a builder is cool. I like being a builder. I like working with technology at a low level and creating things from scratch and having a good understanding of what's happening behind the scenes and under the hood. But that's not to say there isn't another step here where at some point the builders will become the people who are orchestrating things. And the orchestrators are going to be folks who understand how AI agents work and be able to manage teams of AI agents. So they're going to have multiple AI agents under their control and be able to execute. And those sets of skills are going to be not easily won. You're going to have to be in the space and understand how to get work at these things, but they're going to become easier over time. Where when the first like commercial tools pop up that do this really well at some type of commodity price point, they're likely going to be the first people to hop on it, start using it, and gain that advantage. So the question is, do agents actually work? In short, no. Not today. And I think that's a really I'm gonna probably gonna regret that take, but it's because of the failure rate, really. The failure rate's just too high for some of these tools. When I kick off something and it tries to get through it, it's wasting my tokens, it's costing me money, and then the output is not that great. So it's almost like you're spending a lot of time up front to try to get something done that you could just do manually and save yourself all the automation time. As an engineer, we often fall into the same problem where a task that takes 20 minutes, we may spend 30 hours trying to automate that 20-minute task rather than just doing the 20-minute task every month. But it pays off over time because when each of those 20-minute tasks start to build up, you might end up with a process that it really slows down all other areas of either your business, your productivity, or it just inhibits you from getting things done. So removing that 20 minutes here and there, or that 5 minutes in here and there, frees you up to do higher level thinking, higher level tasks. The issue that I'm seeing is a lot of people who are interested in AI agents now, which is really crazy, is that they don't have a traditional tech background. So you have to have a completely different skill set here. And the skill set required, and I'm not even going into like the software engineering skill set, but you still have to have a software engineering mindset. You still need to be proficient with some type of programming tools or at least programming concepts at a high level, like for loops, if then, else this type stuff. And having some comfortability being able to interface with an API, work with, understand how API schemas are documented is just going to give you that bit of competitive edge compared to people who do not have that skill set. And so the pain points with people who have non traditional tech backgrounds who are maybe not in the engineering field and are trying to use AI agents right now is just the setup process is too complex. I I know all too well Python environments are a headache to manage, and there are a lot of people who are coming into it and they just don't understand environment setup. This is not a new problem for engineers. We've been dealing with it for centuries at this point. But setting up your environment can just take so much time before you actually get to the problem that people give, and they want a easy one-click install process versus trying to install this library, set up the Python environment, get Node installed, set up Docker, spin up containers. It's still just so complex to get things stood up. But there are a couple of solutions to this that I completely have avoided this issue to date. And I'll talk about that later. But another pain point is rapidly changing state of the art techniques and methods. So it's really hard to pinpoint what techniques you should be using today. If you're in this space where you're trying to evaluate different RAG methods or different methods for fine tuning and different methods for getting AI agents to communicate, it's almost just worth picking one and getting good at it because they're all in an experimental phase right now. So it's going to be very difficult to say which one's the best. Benchmarks are all over the place. It's just going to be really hard to get any progress on trying to get the definitively best thing. At this point, if you're just using AI agents in and of themselves, that's like a win. So don't worry too much about optimizing every little small piece of it. It's just there's not gonna be much return on that. So with AI agents, the key thing people should be asking themselves right now is how do I create a general purpose framework for myself? And this is the one I've come up with. I don't think any of these steps are groundbreaking steps, but it's what I've used to keep really sane when I'm looking at these things and understand that one, AI agents is a tool. You don't use it for everything. So you have to start with the first thing, which is like a practical use case. If you don't really have a practical use case for it, you're going to find it really hard because of the high failure rate and the complex setup process. So make sure you just have a workflow that you understand. A couple of good ones is writing code snippets. Maybe there's a just boilerplate code you have to write for applications that you're building, and you want agents to spit that stuff out for you over time. We've had code generation for a long time. The difference here with AI agents is that LLM integration and its ability to plan it out. So with code generation, you have to anticipate all the different scenarios and the different components to it. With the AI agent in the mix, the dream goal would be you give it a prompt and it spits out a full stack application. That's not just a trivial marketing or sales page. Next up is like creating a weekly newsletter. This one is great for people in that world. A lot of research goes into building these type of things, automating the collection of different research components, bringing it together, doing like a bulleted list, and then creating like a really meaty first draft that someone can get into and then send out to their audience. Generating research reports is another one. So this example is where researchers who are dealing with a lot of articles and books that they need to read to get to a point, that's often the first step in their research process. So essentially what the AI agents could do is go out, do that kind of initial scanning, surveying of the landscape, producing a report with some key insights and like next steps for the AI researcher. So they can get a leg up, and what may have taken them months to do could probably take them an afternoon, to be honest. Drafting key documents. This one's cool in like the freelancer space where people are writing proposals and drafting SOPs. Even OpenDevin looked at some Upwork jobs and was able to complete the entire job. Although the success rate was really low, this is probably where AI agents are going to have the most impact. Like well-defined software problems are going to be the first ones to be automated away completely. Building landing pages is interesting because this is like the code snippet generation thing too, right? There is already a bunch of tools that spit out landing pages. The difference here is the copy that goes into the landing page. The structure, I think, is down, but the copy that goes into it, people struggle with copy. Although it's a skill that you can develop over time, it's a little bit of a nuance to it where you have to match it up to the target audience. So having an AI agent that goes out, does like research on the target audience, and then writes copy that's going to resonate with that target audience is going to save a lot of people a lot of time as well. And The same idea with the YouTube scripts. It's going out, doing that research, and then coming back with the language and the messaging that makes sense for that YouTube script. The theme here is that these processes are very manual and they take a lot of time, but it's not something that's super cognitively demanding. And so AI agents are great for those type of tasks because as long as you give it something that it can actually reason through step by step without too much ambiguity or hallucinations that get involved with it, it should be able to complete it. So identifying a use case is probably step number one here, making sure you have just a solid use case where AI agents actually make sense. The second part of this general purpose framework is to just get clear on the process itself. And the process is going to come down to what level of complexity are we talking about here? If you have something that is really complex, just know that the rate of success is going to go down considerably when you're trying to use AI agents to solve the problem. And so the way you can get towards understanding the complexity involved is making sure you work backwards from that goal, having the subtask identified, determining what success looks like for each intermediate step. What are the outputs? What are the inputs? So that could be from I want my newsletter that is formatted in this way, or having a JSON output that is very specific to a schema you've defined for your AI agent. And then also thinking about how to assign roles and mix in a little bit of prompt engineering. I think prompt engineering is one of those things that's important. Maybe people have overemphasized it a little bit too much, but you do need to have some good descriptive prompts. Like you can't just say, make me $10 billion in the next 2 weeks, give it to 4 agents, and it's going to work. That's not how things happen. So you're going to have some well-defined roles, well-defined system level prompts for those agents. So understanding just the fundamentals of prompt engineering, which really is just writing good descriptions and asking good questions, is going to make all the difference for these agents that you spin up. And then number 3 is getting good with automation. You're going to want to understand which parts of the process you actually want to automate. The biggest mistake I see people make when trying to automate anything is they try to automate it end to end. Just because you've automated something end to end doesn't mean you've actually improved the process. That's a myth in the automation space. You want to pick the parts that make sense to automate and which parts make sense to continue having the human person in the loop. That also means leveraging just the right tools to automate parts of that process and having a tech stack that's well integrated, has all the key integrations with all the tooling you're using, and allows you to just simply repeat the steps as you continue to build. So as you identify parts for automation, you can easily just, okay, this is my process for automating this, and you automate it away. You don't have to think about integrations between things. And what I want to highlight here is one, start to understand the overall agent ecosystem. There's this really good GitHub repo that has a good overview of the different AI agents in the space. The more important thing is to call out the categories that they have here. The first one is coding. And coding as a category is great to identify because this is where AI agents are probably going to be the most powerful. Eventually, AI agents coding other AI agents, of course. And there's just so many options here available. Getting comfortable with the tools and identifying which ones are good for which use cases makes sense. So something like HexMagick is really good at data analytics and doing data focused work. And something like Codium is great for writing test cases. Find is amazing. Find is amazing for doing research and trying to understand how do I actually develop the software at a high level? What are the broad steps? It's a really good use case for that. V0 by Vercel, it's really good at generating front-end components. So understanding which tools to use for what will make sense in terms of coding, because not everything's going to be great at all coding tasks, a little bit further away from that. So on the productivity tip, I would say this is where you're going to get more into traditional robotic process automation, that classic if then that type work. And so that's where Zapier is really popular on the commercial side, but there are a couple of niche tools that are popping up for this type of stuff. The more, I think, one that everyone's heard of is Multion, which is promising to look at your browser and you give it a task, plan me a vacation, and it'll go through your browser and do all the tasks, has access to all your accounts, and it can set that stuff up for you, which is very promising. Another one is Respel. which I like from an engineering perspective because it has just some good primitives around doing RPA, but it's sprinkling in AI and it has some tight integrations with things like OpenAI and other providers as well. So the next space is like general purpose. This is where I feel like it's going to take the longest to make progress in because general purpose AI agents are usually not good at anything. Because they're general purpose, they really don't excel at any specific task and then they fail at a lot of stuff. I almost would stay away from the general purpose stuff unless you have it's a passion project for you and you really want to get to general purpose agents. So HR I'll skip because I don't really know much about HR work, but I'll say that asking a database stuff is going to be pretty interesting when AI agents can connect to databases. The problem with AI agents connecting to databases is that they hallucinate and you don't want the AI agent to change your data. And with data being so sensitive, I really think it's going to be a long time before people are going to let AI agents loose on a database that has like information that's very sensitive and cannot be manipulated in any way. That might be a while before we see those in mass adoption. And so the space that's really hot right now is, of course, like building your own AI agent. And there's just so many tools for this. The most popular one right now, as of time of recording, is probably Crew AI, which is really just, I think it's almost a wrapper around some of the LangChain toolings or it integrates tightly with LangChain. There's also AutoGen as well, which is the Microsoft offering for this type of stuff. It takes some of the best practices from LangChain and like Microsoft Research. And from what I've seen, those are the big players in the space right now for AI agents. Beyond that, I wouldn't really look towards any other open source tooling because one, they're just really buggy, hard to install. And that's no knock on these libraries. They're doing great work. And the space is so new that of course it's going to be hard to work with these things. But at like from a maturity standpoint, these are probably the most mature tools available today. And then for agent runtimes, this is where I find the more interesting work because I think the runtime underneath saves you from all of the issues, like I mentioned before. And one of the best platforms I've used so far is Modal for sure. And what Modal allows you to do is run your Python code as if it was just on your local desktop, but you can throw it into the cloud, throw it on a H100, throw it on whatever GPUs you want, but it executes as if it's just in your local desktop. What this really does is it decouples you from having to do that setup step that's required when going to the cloud for any of these workflows. Now, is it like the perfect tool for every use case? I wouldn't say so, but for that step up for developers, it's definitely going to be a game changer for sure. And then AWS has Amazon Bedrock, which is really good as a managed serverless runtime. And that's going to be a game changer for folks who need that granular level control and security moving forward. And they want to interact with like state of the art models without much fuss. So that's going to be really good. I think Google Cloud Platform and Azure as well are going to be great for different use cases. I feel like Google Cloud Platform, GCP, is going to be great for people who already have all their stuff in Google and they just want to throw a little bit of AI on top of it. And Azure, of course, is going to be for like the heavy regulated industries, government, people who are like already have a Microsoft shop, or again, folks who have all their stuff in Microsoft tools. And so they can just sprinkle a little Azure on top, sprinkle a little AI on top, and get a lot of benefits from agents in that case. But for the people who are building it and maybe at the developer level, for sure it's going to be Modal and for sure it's going to be AWS, which is just going to make sense because of the programming models there. And let's look at that second bonus tip, which is ditching your local host. I previewed it a little bit, but you're going to have a tough time doing this locally, especially if you're on the non-traditional side and you're not coming from an engineering background. It's going to be really hard to spin up things locally. And on top of how hard this already is in this ambiguous space, you're just doing yourself a disservice. I would say look into leveraging tools that kind of put things on a managed runtime for you. Even if it does come at a cost, the time savings alone makes sense. And of course, you have to identify your use case and all that things. But I think once you have it down to, okay, I know how I want this to run, but I don't want to be sitting at my keyboard, like manually stitching everything together with open source tools. I want something to take care of all this for me. Uh, Perfect place to start is like OpenAI, Claude, Perplexity, LangChain, Crew AI. These are already somewhat in that ambiguous space where we can put this stuff on the cloud or move it to a managed runtime. They have some good integrations. Vercel is another platform if you're building something consumer facing where you want to integrate with AI and maybe use AI agents in the background through their serverless functions, you can do that. And then if you're building like a heavy duty line of business application, that's where AWS, Amazon Bedrock agents are going to come in. I'm thinking like insurance companies and maybe agencies who are writing large amounts of copy for clients and things like that. So you're going to want something that's a little bit more heavy duty that you can control the granular data. And for developers who need that low level of control but don't want to be managing the actual AI infrastructure and just want everything at the API level, Modal, Beam, Base 10, Gradient, Replicate, there's a lot of these tools actually. That's going to be where you can really leverage them moving forward without trying to do everything on your local desktop. Those are a couple things to watch. Those are the best use cases for them. And that's where I think the whole AI agent ecosystem is. And to recap, do agents actually work? I would say no, they don't. And beyond a couple of really unique use cases where they shine, there's a lot where they don't shine. But I don't think that's going to be the case for much longer. This year, we're probably going to see a big uptick in their efficiency and how many use cases they can solve and like overall performance. As with AI in a lot of these different spaces, it moves pretty quickly. But that's the general framework. I think start with a good use case, understand the manual steps to that use case and understand the outputs and what success looks like. And then three, just be ready to automate it. And having a good integrated tech stack is what's going to make the difference between you and someone else who's kind of struggling with and fiddling around with stitching things together.